Whoever controls the narrative controls reality. And few understand this like Jay-Z. But before he became the ruthless billionaire we know today, he was just Sean Carter, a young observer, silent, studying every move around him like a predator studies its prey. And it was alongside Sean Combs' Diddy that he learned something most people will never comprehend. Power isn't about speaking. It's about knowing when to stay silent. The Apprentice of Silence, New York, the 90s, hip-hop's golden era. Diddy was already a rising force. He wasn't just a producer. He was an architect of perception. He understood that music was only surface level. The real game happened behind the scenes. Contracts, image, narrative. And then he met Jay-Z. It wasn't love at first sight. It was recognition. Diddy saw in Jay something few possessed, calculated hunger. Not the desperate hunger of amateurs, the cold hunger of strategists. Jay-Z watched everything. How Diddy entered a room, how he spoke with executives, how he never revealed his true intentions until the exact right moment. And it was there, in that attentive silence, that Jay absorbed the first lesson. Never show your cards before it's time. This is Law 3 from the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Conceal your intentions. Diddy understood that the business world, especially in entertainment, is a psychological battlefield. Whoever reveals their plans first loses. Whoever shows vulnerability gets devoured. And Jay-Z absorbed it like a sponge, silently, patiently. There's a brutal difference between silence from fear and silence from strategy. The first is weakness. The second is power. When you talk too much, you give away power. You reveal your fears, your ambitions, your weaknesses. But when you observe, when you listen, when you control the flow of information, you become unpredictable. And in the world of power, unpredictability is armor. Jay-Z started applying this immediately. While other rappers fought publicly and burned bridges over ego, Jay moved in silence. He built alliances, studied contracts, learned about distribution and royalties. While everyone was performing power, Jay was accumulating real power, and nobody noticed. Until it was too late. Diddy wasn't just a businessman, he was a practical psychologist. He created Bad Boy Records not just as a label but as a brand of aspiration. He knew that people don't buy music. They buy feeling. So they buy identity. They buy the illusion of power. But behind the scenes, he was cold, calculating, ruthless. He always entered rooms with a dominant presence. He spoke little in first meetings, just observed. Studied who had ego, who had fear, who was desperate. Then he adjusted his approach for each person. This is high-level manipulation through personalized perceptions. And Jay-Z saw all of this up close. Jay-Z didn't copy Diddy. He absorbed the principles and adapted them. Where Diddy was expansive, Jay was contained. Where Diddy created spectacle, Jay created mystery. When he founded Rockefeller Records, he didn't announce he would dominate the industry. He simply released reasonable doubt. Those paying attention noticed this was different. Jay wasn't trying to be the loudest. He was building credibility. And credibility is worth more than hype. The master of reputation. If you want to understand how the darkest minds of power operate, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this is just the beginning. Jay-Z didn't stop at Law 3. He mastered Law 5. Reputation is the cornerstone of power. How many times have you seen Jay-Z in unnecessary public controversies? Almost never. Because he understood that every public action is either an investment or a debit in your reputation account. Diddy built reputation through constant presence. Parties, appearances, spectacle. Jay-Z chose the opposite. Selective presence. When he appeared, it meant something. When he spoke, people listened. This is strategic scarcity. And scarcity creates value. Jay-Z built an aura of inevitability. He always seems 3 steps ahead. Always in control. But this isn't accident. It's psychological design. Remember when he sold his stake in the Brooklyn Nets? Critics said he was leaving the game. But then he invested in Tidal, champagne brands, tech startups. The narrative changed. He was diversifying, positioning for the next level. This is perception manipulation at master level. He doesn't need to always win. He just needs people to believe he's winning. And when you control the narrative, you control perceived reality. Now here's where things get dark. Jay-Z is also a ruthless strategist when threatened. Law 15. When you win, crush completely. Take Nas. Early 2000s. Nas releases Ether. one of the most devastating diss tracks in hip-hop history. Jay responds musically with Takeover. But that was just the visible response. The invisible response was much more lethal. While Nas focused on the lyrical battle, Jay-Z made business moves. He became president of Def Jam, Nas's own label. Let that sink in. Jay-Z literally became his biggest rival's boss. This isn't just winning a battle. This is rewriting the rules so you always win. He did it without fanfare, just silent, definitive moves. This is asymmetric dominance. You don't fight on your opponent's field. You change the field itself. When you control the infrastructure, labels, platforms, narratives, you don't need to destroy enemies individually. They simply become irrelevant. And that's the cruelest form of victory, not being defeated, but being forgotten. Jay-Z also mastered strategic presence. Law 6, everything is judged by appearance. Stand out. Remember the release of 444? No warnings, just release. And the world stopped. He cultivated a reputation where every move means something. When he speaks, people listen. Not because he speaks loudly, but because he rarely speaks. Here's where Jay and Diddy diverge. Diddy is about maximum presence everywhere. Jay applied Law 16. Use absence to increase respect. Too much circulation makes the price go down. He disappeared strategically. Created mystery. Each return was an event. Diamonds are valuable for their scarcity. Jay-Z transformed his presence into a diamond. Jay-Z's genius reached another level with Law 25. Recreate yourself constantly. Phase 1, hustler from the streets. Phase 2, industry mogul. Phase 3, cultural icon. Phase 4, billionaire businessman. Phase 5, cultural statesman. Each phase was a deliberate death and rebirth. He constantly redefined himself, always ahead of public perception. Diddy changed from Puff Daddy to P. Diddy to Diddy. But here's the difference. Diddy changed the packaging. Jay-Z changed the substance. Law 48. Assume formlessness. Jay-Z doesn't cling to dogmas. He refuses to be defined. Is he a rapper? Businessman? Investor? Activist? Yes, all of this, and none of this. Definition is limitation, but this constant reinvention has a brutal psychological price. When you're always recreating yourself, who are you really? Is there a true Sean Carter underneath all these strategic layers? Leave a comment below. Do you think Jay-Z still knows who he really is? Or did he lose himself in the very laws that made him powerful? The winner's void, and that brings us to the darkest place of all. Men like Jay-Z and Diddy didn't build empires out of passion. They built empires because they needed to prove something to the world, to themselves. And when you finally win, what's left? There are two types of ambition. Destination ambition, I want to get there. Escape ambition, I can't stay here. The first is constructive. The second is compulsive. Sean Carter grew up in the Marcy projects. Poverty, violence, absent father. His psychological response: I'm going to be so big I'll never feel that pain again. This isn't ambition. It's a defense mechanism. The empire isn't the goal. It's the anesthesia. Here's the problem with anesthesia. It never heals the wound. It just masks the pain. So you need increasingly larger doses, more money, more power, more victories. But it's never enough, because that child in Marcy projects who felt powerless is still there. And no amount of billions can heal it. Jay-Z could have retired years ago. He has billions, legacy, family, everything he said he wanted. So why does he continue? Because stopping means confronting the void. Stopping means asking, who am I without the struggle? And that's terrifying, because the answer might be nobody. Just Sean Carter, that wounded boy he spent his life trying to bury. Diddy and Jay-Z are two sides of the same coin. Both built empires. Both applied the laws ruthlessly. But they deal with the void differently. Diddy fills it with noise, always moving, creating, appearing. Extravagant parties, name changes, constant projects. This looks like confidence, but it might be fear of introspection. When you're always busy, you never have to look inside. You never have to ask, who am I, when the cameras turn off? Jay-Z chose a different strategy, but equally evasive. He hides behind absolute control, meticulous privacy, carefully constructed narratives. He reveals vulnerability, but always calculated, always on his terms. Even his confessions seem strategic. Is he hiding from the world or from himself? Think about 444. An album about failures, betrayal, regret. But releasing a vulnerable album when you're already a billionaire isn't risky. It's strategic. You gain humanity points without losing power. You show vulnerability without becoming vulnerable. That's the saddest part. Even vulnerability became a tool. Even honesty became a move. When you live by the laws of power, you forget how to be anything but strategic. Jay-Z conquered everything. The music industry that rejected him, the peers who doubted him, the poverty that traumatized him. He won. And now, what's left to conquer? This explains the diverse investments, new industries, unexpected partnerships. He's not doing this for money. He's doing this because he needs to keep conquering. Because without conquest, he'd face the terrible question, what if none of this really matters? Men who live by these laws cannot have genuine relationships. Every genuine relationship requires real vulnerability. Trust without calculation. When you spend decades hiding intentions and controlling narratives, you forget how to be genuine. Jay-Z is married to Beyoncé. They seem perfect. Combined power, strategic partnership. But is it love or alliance? Do they really know each other? Is there calculation even in intimacy? This protection has a cost. Perpetual emotional isolation. Jay-Z is obsessed with legacy. I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. I want my children to inherit something that can't be taken. But here's the paradox. The more you build for the future, the less you live the present. The more you work for your children, the less time you spend with them. And when you die, you're not there to see the legacy. So who did you really build this for? Perhaps for that boy in Marcy Projects, to prove he wasn't worthless, to prove he existed. And if that's the case, legacy isn't about the future. It's about healing the past. And the tragedy is, the past cannot be healed with future achievements. Closing all 48 of Robert Greene's laws are about external power. How to conquer, how to win. But there's a law he didn't write. Law 49. No external power can fill an internal void. You can have billions, empires, legacy, but if you built it to escape from yourself, you're just building a more elaborate prison. Carl Jung said, the only person you can't run from is yourself. Eventually, you have to look in the mirror and face the question you spent your life avoiding. Who am I without all of this? So was it worth it? Was it worth trading authenticity for influence? Connection for control? Peace for power? They'll probably never say, because saying would show weakness. And showing weakness violates the very laws that made them great. So they continue, conquering, building, proving, hoping the next victory will fill the void. But it never does, because the void isn't out there. It's in here. And no law of power teaches how to heal it. Here's the most disturbing part. They're teaching their children the same laws. Blue Ivy is being molded as a brand. The cycle continues. You believe you're preparing your children for success, but maybe you're just passing the same wound forward. The same need to prove, the same inability to rest. Generation after generation, the legacy isn't wealth, it's strategic trauma. So here's the truth Jay-Z learned from Diddy. The laws of power work perfectly for everything except happiness. They teach you to dominate the external world, but not to make peace with the internal world. They teach you to conquer enemies, but not your demons. They teach you to build empires, but not real meaning. True power isn't about dominating others. It's about not needing to dominate anymore. The mind that dominates the world often loses itself in the process. When you finally conquer everything you ever wanted, you discover that the only thing you really needed was to stop conquering. The laws of power are real, they work, but they have a cost nobody mentions. The more you master them, the less you can simply live. Maybe true victory isn't becoming powerful, it's becoming free. But that freedom, men like Jay-Z and Diddy will never find it, because to find it, they'd have to abandon everything that made them who they are. And that is the final prison, the prison of victory. If you want to dive deeper into the dark minds of the powerful, subscribe to Mentis right now and leave a comment. Would you follow these same laws if you knew the price? Thanks for watching.